are three major things which modern human thinks he knows, and what so-called caveman didn't, and those are that the Earth orbits around the Sun, that the universe and the Earth are billions of years old, and that life came to be by an accident, and from then on it evolved by itself millions of years ago. But is that true? We have heard those things, and we repeat them all over again, but can you give me a reasonable proof, argument for those things? Or you cannot. In that case, you are a blind believer who doesn't think, but he is considered to be smart nevertheless. Stupid person who refuses to think is considered to be smart. Something is not right here. Something stinks here. Smart person thinks. People use those examples as proofs which proved, according to them, the Bible wrong. I, as a former physicist and today's Bible believer, I believe that the Sun orbits the Earth, but I'm not 100% sure. I cannot be. The Bible might allow another explanation, and the Earth could orbit the Sun nevertheless. You can be still Christian, lover of truth and of love if you believe one or another thing. What about the age of the universe? Again, I, as a former physicist and today's Bible believer, I believe that the universe and the Earth are about 6,000 years old. You can be still Christian, lover of truth and of love if you believe that the universe and the Earth are much older. The Bible might allow that kind of explanation. People use that argument against the Bible too, but how could they, if Bible allows another explanation too? Something is fishy here, right from the beginning, and I will show you further on what kind of assumptions, mistakes, false evidences, lies have been promoted by many just to prove the Bible wrong. No one had proven the Bible wrong, but I will show you many wrongs of science. But the most important thing is the age of humankind. There the Bible doesn't allow any other interpretation. The humankind is not older than about 6,000 years. If you believe otherwise, you cannot believe, trust the Bible. You might say you do, but you don't. Adam and Eve didn't exist according to you, so the first chapters of the Bible either cannot be trusted, are false, you don't believe the Bible. You believe a passage here and passage there, so you made yourself your own Bible. That's what you believe. Or you could say that one has to understand those things in a metaphoric way. How is that? You don't know. Basically, you cannot understand them. You are saying that you cannot understand the Bible, so it is useless, according to you, and God of the Bible is stupid God, who tried to communicate with us, but he failed. He doesn't know how to communicate with us. So how can you trust something or someone you don't understand? You cannot, you see. And hundreds, millions of people who claim to be Christian but believe evolution are liars and self-deceivers. Their God is God of lies, Satan, and not the real God, the Word of God, Jesus Christ. And they testify about that also with their lives. Their lives, their hearts, their minds are never ever changed. What I will do today is that I will show you how people were cheated into thinking that science has proven without a shadow of a doubt that the universe and the Earth are billions of years old. They could be, but science cannot never ever prove that, and every thinking scientist knows that. I will start with foundational assumption, which cannot be proven nor disproved by the science, and it is not only me who says so. The philosophy of science says so. The scientists who understand science are saying that. These assumptions are called axioms and are basically dogmas. Yes, believe that the science has correctly determined the age of the universe and of the Earth has its dogmas. It is a faith. The foundations of this faith are namely axioms, dogmas, which cannot be proven by scientific means. Belief in the old Earth is not scientific, but people claim that it is. They either don't understand the science and therefore they cannot be trusted, or they are liars and therefore they cannot be trusted. The story could end here, but there is more. But first, what are those assumptions? Science is investigating spiritual laws, and before investigating them, science has already assumed what kind of nature they have. So before exploring their nature, you have already made your mind what is their nature. That is not scientific at all. One thing is to claim, for example, that the speed of light is a constant in the last 100 or so years here on the Earth, from the time it was being measured and where it was measured. But completely another thing is to claim that the speed of light is the same in places and in times where we have never ever been. That is outside our solar system and in the past and in the future. We cannot know that. Don't give me Einstein now. Look my previous video. We cannot know what we haven't measured. We have to assume those things, okay? And that is what science is telling us. Those are its foundational assumptions, dogmas, which are covered up from the people. That's not very honest, at least. How can you trust someone who is not honest? I can't. To use faith against faith and say that one is objective and the other one isn't, well, that is not honest. It is not objective. It is deceiving. It is stupid. But this was done and the whole world gladly went along. Initial so-called scientific assumption, dogma, is that spiritual laws don't change in time nor in place. Well, the biblical view on this topic is that they do. The world was created, the heavens stretched. Thy will be done as in heaven, so in earth. The views are completely different, and therefore it is obvious that the science will not confirm, at least not entirely, the biblical story. It cannot. Do you see magic? Trick here. Scientists have chosen themselves foundations which are completely different from the biblical ones and built complex theories on those foundations. They forgot that they have chosen themselves different foundations, and at the end they have boldly claimed that the Bible is proven wrong. Why? Because their measurements don't confirm the Bible. Why not? Because their measurements are based on complex theories which are based on completely different foundations. You see, the trick of science is very easy to understand. Science is deceiving us from the beginning. The earth has to be so old that there is at least some chance that life could begin by chance without God, the Creator, especially God of the Bible. What is that chance? Even if the earth is billions of years old, the possibility that life came to be by itself, by error, is ridiculously small, negligible. Hopefully I will show you that in the next video when I will speak about evolution. Everyone can understand that. It is very easy, you will see. What is the defense of lovers of science? Well, they say, there are many different methods to determine the age of the universe, the Earth. How come they agree so good if they are wrong? Well, I have two answers for that. If they agree because to you a free will was given. You might believe a proven liar, science, the word of man, or, according to you, a proven liar, the Bible, the word of God. The God of the Bible gave you free will, but you see, the results of different methods are not the same. They are quite different, substantially different from each other. Science uses very precise language, but sometimes, when it suits it, also a very blurred one. The age of a rock or a stone can be determined by measurement of various kinds of radioactive elements or their daughter elements, but please know that even though all of those ages are being considered ages of the rock or stone, they differ significantly already in their definitions. It is a very deceiving thing. For example, one method, which is based on measurements of argon, gives sort of age of the rock. What is that age? The time from when the rock was supposedly heated above such and such temperature. Argon is gas, and if rock is heated, it leaves the rock, and it resets the age to 0, or even to some arbitrary age between 0 and current so-called age. So the age calculated by one method differs completely from the age calculated by the another one. So where is the agreement then? I will tell you only the foundational tricks and lies now. It is being claimed that the measurements of age are accurate to a couple of percent or even less than a percent. That means if scientists dates a rock to be 600 million years old, it could be 540 millions or 660 millions, but never ever a couple of thousand years, okay? Now, what is the lie here? Those ages of the universe and rocks are not being measured at all. They are pretty much always calculated. For example, the content of radioactive element in a particular rock or their descendants, daughter elements, is being measured with astonishing precision. That's true. But one has to convert this measurement by the use of complex theories and heavy assumptions to get the age, the calculated age. The main source of error, which cannot even be determined by the science, is hidden. This is a huge trick, you see. By claiming that the age of certain things is being measured, one hides the main source of errors. I have said that science cannot evaluate those errors, but sometimes scientists could evaluate those errors by scientific means, but they don't want to. Why not? Because all those great achievements, great calculations, which are being called great measurements of the age of the Earth and the universe, would become in an instant useless, and greatness of scientists greatly diminished. People would lose at least some faith in science, and this is not in the interest of subjective and from money-dependent scientists. So if science claims that a rock is 600 million years old, that could mean it is 600 centuries years old or 600 billions of years old. It is not their measurements which are wrong. It is their interpretation of the measurements which is wrong. I took a closer look on a couple of measurements and calculations of ages of rocks, which rely on measurements of radioactive elements and their daughter elements, which are very accurate. We have ordinary, not very reliable method and more reliable methods, according to scientists, like isochronous dating and uranium-lead method, but in reality they are even less reliable as the ordinary method is. The principle of basic radiometric method is the following one. Let's say we have a radioactive element or isotope, for example uranium-235, with half-life 700 million years. What is half-life? If there would be a ton of uranium-235 in a time t, and one would weight uranium-235 after 700 million years, there would be only a half of a ton still present there. The rest would decay into another element. After 1,400 million years, another half of the half would decay. So after 1,400 million years, there would be 250 kilograms of uranium-235 left. And then we have another element with another decay time, like uranium-238, which has half-life of 4.5 billion years. We have done this calculation at university, Professor said. We know how much uranium-235 there is present today and how much there is uranium-238 relative to uranium-235. There is 99.27% of uranium-238 and 0.72% of uranium-235. The remaining portion is mainly uranium-234. So we know the present condition. But what was the initial condition when the Earth began? Professor said. There is no reason why there would not be present the same quantity of uranium-235 as there was uranium-238. Wait a minute. No reason? First of all, according to science, all those elements came into existence in explosions of supernova about which we don't know much. The isotopes have different cross-sections and so on. So we don't know. No reason. Science at least 10 years ago didn't know any reason why there is much more matter in the universe and why there is so little antimatter. According to the same logic, there should be the same quantities of both, but there isn't. No reason, yeah. If you don't know the reason, it doesn't mean there is none. But I was quiet and went along. And we calculated the age of the Earth, which was about 4 billion years, as I remember. And Professor said, you see, we got the right result. Thus our assumption that there was the same quantity of uranium-235 as there was uranium-238 is confirmed. All scientific methods used to determine the age of the universe and of the Earth have the same problem. One has to imagine the initial state, and many times one doesn't know even the final state, and one has to assume that the laws during that time didn't change, and that our approximations of the laws are good enough. So it is a huge speculation, faith, subjective thing, completely subjective. A Catholic priest who studied at Jesuits College, the father of the Big Bang Theory, the man who formulated so-called Hubble's law before Hubble did, George Henry Joseph Edward Lemaitre, laid down the foundations which led toward the wrong estimation of the age of the universe. The heavens were stretched, the Bible says, and the science confirms that. Who hears those things? Pretty much no one. But if one assumes that the laws were constant, that the speed of light was constant during that time, one gets wrong result. At university we have measured even the distance of one galaxy from the Earth. It was a great disappointment for me. So many assumptions. The initial state here is not questionable. It is in agreement with the Bible, but all the rest, the unchangeable laws, the measurement of distances in universe, but especially the assumption of the unchangeable so-called constants, are heavy questionable. It is a faith which cannot be backed up by any scientific means. But one might claim that one theory supports other, one measurement supports the other. But why? Because the scientists fill up all unknowns, all parameters in such a way that they get the expected result. That's worthless. But since the science is so huge and isn't allowed to be doubted in, everyone goes along. Today scientists have discovered that the universe is expanding, and not only that, it is accelerating. No one expected such a thing. Never ever. It puts into question all what we know about universe, its age, everything. But scientists have found a way out. There exists imaginary mass. Well, they don't know what that is. They don't see it. It has very strange properties. It existed before the universe began, and almost the whole universe is made, not of matter as we know it, but of this imaginary matter which they call dark matter, and of imaginary energy which they call dark energy. All our so-called knowledge about the universe collapsed, but money and human fame dependent and hungry scientists, nor they believers, don't want to acknowledge such a thing. God is showing us that we know nothing, we see nothing, everything is dark without His word, which is the light. The science collapsed. The Bible didn't. Never ever. Let's look into past now. How those attacks on the Bible started. One of the first was the attack of a French scientist, Georges Louis Leclerc, Comte de Buffon. He measured cooling times of spheres with arbitrary diameter, with arbitrary composition, from arbitrary initial temperature to arbitrary final temperature. He extrapolated those measurements to the size of the Earth and to the composition of the Earth. Now, how did he do such an extrapolation? Who knows and who cares? The main thing was that he proved that the Earth is much older than what was and is believed, the Bible says. He estimated that the Earth is at least 75,000 years old. Everything about his experiment and proof was heavy burdened with errors and unreliable assumptions. He didn't know the initial state, he imagined one. He didn't know the composition of the Earth, he imagined one. But the main thing is that he proved that the Earth is very, very old. And such lying and deceiving and at least heavy questionable so-called objective proofs gave wings to other scientists. New generations were born who already believed that the Earth is old, and they have never ever doubted that. We teach our children, we implant such a thought in them before they can even speak. They will never ever doubt the official scientific determined age of the Earth. Never ever. The driving force for the old Earth was hatred toward the Bible and belief in evolution. The Earth had to be billions of years old, that evolution would be at least plausible to some extent. But even billions of years don't suffice for that. The Earth should be billions of billions of billions of billions of years old. That's my quick estimation. And it was not until the invention of radiometric methods that science got the desired results. That is, couple of billions of years. One has to imagine the initial state, the final state, and the process in between. And if the result is hundreds of millions of years or more, the result is considered to be scientific. That is so subjective. Let me return to the radiometric methods. We don't know the initial nor the final state. How come? It is very simple. You see, the Earth's interior is liquid according to science, and there is convection going on. There are convection currents taking place from the inner, hotter areas to the outer, cooler areas and back. Let me describe this process. Let's start in outer, cooler region. Some crystal starts to form there, some solids, which are denser from the surrounding liquid, and therefore they start to sink, to go down toward the hotter area. And what happens there? They melt, they become liquid once again. And since they become less dense from their surrounding, they start to rise toward the outer cooler areas, where they turn to solid once again. So you see, there is a segregation taking place there, which is dependent on melting temperature and density. Every science-believing person knows that. How did mines came to be? Silver, golden, copper, iron ore, mines. By processes of segregation which take place in the earth. So in general, lighter elements which form solids with lower melting temperature will be more common in outer parts of the earth, and heavier elements which form solids with higher melting points will be found more abundantly in the lower regions. We use many different segregation techniques for uranium enrichment, for example. We repeat segregation cycle many times. And similar thing is taking place in the earth too, but this is being completely neglected as far as I know. There are many isotopes of lead on which many radiometric datings rely on. But what happens? When the eruption of lava takes place, that lava is richer with the lightest elements or isotopes of a particular element like lead-204 and less rich with lead-206, for example. And there are not so much heavier elements like uranium, for example. The segregation of uranium isotopes due to much higher melting temperatures happens in lower regions and is usually not so obvious at the outer parts of the earth. The first lava is therefore richer with lead and thus considered to be hundreds or tens of millions of years older than the next eruption of lava. Because uranium decays into lead and because there is much more lead in the lower solidified regions of lava, it is considered therefore to be extremely older, even though it might be older only for a couple of hours, days, months, or years. So you see, Professor said, we know the composition of uranium. Yes, we know it, but only in the upper regions of the earth. Who knows what is going on in the inner regions? There could easily be burned more uranium-235 than uranium-238, as it is the case in nuclear reactors. And thus our ignorance is making the earth, in the eyes of scientists, much older than it is in reality. Segregation is a serious thing, which is, according to my knowledge, not being evaluated. Because how could we evaluate such a thing? But what do the scientists do? They imagine. This was the first Pangea, and the second one, and this and that. They cannot evaluate the contribution of segregation on their measurements, so pretty much everything what they do is useless. They are doing science fiction in its literal sense, but since this helps the godless world not to take the Bible seriously, they are damned good bait in its literal sense. Another source of errors in radiometric dating, and this one is being acknowledged by scientists, is contamination. Magma or lava comes in contact with rocks and stones, which have different composition of lead and uranium, and that can mess up the estimation of age of a particular rock. And therefore the scientists have to know where to take their samples. But I see an issue here. Scientists already know the age of a particular rock and they know where to take samples to get a result that they desire. Man, that is very dangerous, very subjective, very not scientific, self-deluding, quasi-scientific, useless work. What about carbon dating? Well, here again, one has to assume a lot of things. What was the initial state? Well, if the Earth is billions of years old, and we know it is, they say, then we can measure remains of living tissues, creatures, plants, all up to several 10,000s of years, assuming that the samples were not contaminated. If the quantity of radioactive carbon was constant, stationary, then the results are valid, but if not, the results are not valid at all, especially the older ones. So once again, the initial state is a question and what happened in between, if the sample was contaminated in any way or not. So carbon dating cannot be used as a proof that the Earth and humankind are more than 6,000 years old. What about coal and oil? We hear all the time, coal and oil are millions of years old. Well, maybe they are, but I have some doubts about that, especially regarding oil. During all those millions of years, how come the pressure of the soil and rocks above it didn't push it to the surface? There was plenty of time for such a thing. But never mind this thing. Today oil can be produced in laboratory in a couple of hours. In nature, the process, according to the scientists, takes place millions of years, and in laboratory only a couple of hours. Wow. And what about coal? It takes millions of years to get coal. We hear that all the time. Well, I was climbing on a nearby mountain, and there was a fireplace with an interesting story. A few years ago, climbers made a fireplace there for the first time to cook a meal, pretty much on the top of the mountain or hill in the woods. They extinguished the fire, sort of, but the smoke was coming out of the soil for the next couple of weeks. The soil burnt, and after some weeks there remained a deep hole. How can the soil burn? It can't. Well, by school indoctrinating system and by TV, I was indoctrinated into thinking that low-level grade coal needs a swamp, plain-type areas for its creation, but not swampy, top-of-the-mountain area. We know that the soil can burn, but on the other hand, we don't know that because of the indoctrination. We have to believe the official story, and one wonders how many fires and deaths would be prevented if people would know the truth. So you see, there exists another possible explanation for the existence of coal and oil findings, like huge worldwide flood, which put a lot of soil and trees and plants and animals together. What about ice dating? Again, look at its assumptions. Assumption is that one line in the ice represents 1 year. But that is a ridiculous assumption, easily refutable. Several times in a year it is snowing, and in between there are periods of warmer weather. So why assume that one line represents 1 year? Apparently, there were found in polar ice 100,000 such lines. So is the age of the ice really 100,000 of years? You have not been told a lot of things. The deeper the ice, the closer are the lines to each other, and that represents a great source of error in determination of its age too. Why are people believing such a thing? Because they already know that the world is billions of years old. That's why they don't even think that one line might not represent 1 year. And since 100,000 of lines are being counted, well, surely that represents 100,000 of years in their limited imagination. What about tree dating, lines in trees? The same thing. This is not really a reliable method. Yes, one line here represents more or less 1 year, but one has to put together many lines of many trees, and here errors can sneak in. What about stalactites and stalagmites in caves? As a child in school and watching TV, I was told that stalactites and stalagmites in caves grow exceedingly slow, several thousands of years, but what was the initial assumption? That the speed of growth was the same. The worldwide flood wasn't taken into account, for example. But what to speak about worldwide flood, which is being rejected by the mainstream of science? What about the influence of ice ages, which did exist in the heads of scientists? Is this influence evaluated? I don't think so. The older the cave, the more people it attracts, the more money it brings, and people just love money. But I have seen stalactites on local bridges, more than 10 centimeters long, but they were not older than 50 years. And not only that, I have seen stalactite and stalagmite in building under a balcony, and the building was not older than 10 years. No pipe was broken there. So once again, in nature, the process takes several tens of thousands of years, according to scientists, but according to my observation and observation of many other people, even scientists, it can take also only several years. All this illusion of the old Earth was produced to support the religion of evolution, but surprisingly enough, if evolution is true, it denies the old Earth. And if the Earth is young, the evolution is false. In either cases, I strongly believe that the Earth is not billions of years old. I will show you a couple of examples about that, how evolution disproves the old Earth, in the video where I will speak about evolution, if God willing. What else? Well, some scientists use genetics to determine the initial pool of humans, when it started, what was the initial population of humans, and so on. As far as I remember, some of them came quite close to the biblical story, several thousands of people 25,000 years ago. This is as far as I remember. I might be wrong. Please know that. But what do those estimations assume? That the speed of DNA changing, or rate of mutations, as they call those changes, is constant. There could be hidden a huge error, and another thing is that we don't know how mutations work. We don't. High school students, they know. I knew everything in the high school, but when I started to go deeper in the area of physics, I realized that I was lied. The real thing was misrepresented to me and to all my generation. We don't know practically anything by our mental speculations. But there is something we can know, as it is written in the Bible. And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name. And moreover, these things have I written unto you that believe on the name of the Son of God, that ye may know that ye have eternal life, and that ye may believe on the name of the Son of God. If one goes deep in science, one can find there only stupidity and lies and errors. On the surface, everything looks nice, though. But with the Bible, it is completely different. On the surface, it might look completely wrong to us, but when one goes deep in it, man, how beautiful, trustworthy it is. Till next time, take care.